What does it mean that God is self-existent? Hello and welcome to another episode of Dive Deep a la carte with Lance Phelps. Today I'm going to be continuing my look at J.I. Packer's book, Concise Theology. Specifically, we're going to be covering the chapter on God's self-existence. God has always been is the subtitle. His verse is Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So we're dealing with God's self-existence. In the last chapter, we dealt with his name, his I, and one of the ways that he describes himself is that he is. God is the great I am. What that means is that God has self-existence within himself. He has existence as a necessary quality of himself. So the question is, from where did everything come? That's one of the ultimate questions. From where did everything come? Why is there something rather than nothing? And the answer is that there is something rather than nothing because God is the ultimate something. Because, see, when you are trying to deduce whether or not we should exist, if we were necessary to exist, every time you start breaking it apart, you say, well, should humans exist? You say, not necessarily. They don't necessarily exist because a human can die and can, dissolve. Okay, well, how about their cells? Do human cells exist by necessity? You're like, no, they don't. They can break apart and they can become atoms. Well, can atoms exist necessarily? Well, once we figured out how to split the atom, we discovered no, they necessarily can't. What about the elements? Well, from a naturalistic viewpoint of philosophy, there has to be something that is self-existent, that has the power of existence within itself. And the naturalistic person says, well, then it's the very fabric of space and time itself. But this doesn't make any sense because if the fabric of space and time itself, it has this quality of self-existence, very well, why is it or how is it possible that morass of chaos birthed us? This, of course, makes no logical sense because the design that you see, the design, as Alvin Plantinga puts it, the design discourse that we see around us, is not indicative of the way that the universe is described as morass of chaos. So when we look at the world, we realize that something has to be self-existent. There must be a self-existent, and it actually makes more sense that there is a self-existent being, personal being, rather than a self-existent, just simply immaterial mass or something like the essence of the universe. So then the talk of a God becomes much more rational than the atheists like to put it. But when we talk about God, we're talking about the self-existent creator, the self-existent being that must by necessity exist. And when we talk about God, we are talking about God as a self-existent truth so I'm going to go ahead and read Packer's quote here. God's self-existence is a basic truth. At the outset of his presentation of the unknown God to the Athenian idolaters, Paul explained that this God, the world's creator, is not served by human hands as if he needed anything, because he himself gives all men life and breath and everything. So everything proceeds from God. Everything proceeds from him as a personal being. And so it makes perfect sense that we would have a universe that is well-ordered and that is, set up to be logical. But as Packer points out, we cannot ascribe human-like qualities to God in many cases. I mean, there are certain things that we do share with God. There are certain what theologians call communicable attributes, but there are many incommunicable attributes. And one of the incommunicable attributes is God's aseity. And God's aseity simply means from himself. All things flow from God. And he himself does not require anything from us for his existence. He is self-existent, and his self-existence does not require anything to continue or go forth. But we, who are contingent, who are not self-existent, require him, his constant input, in order to continue to exist. I'm going to leave you with this quote. In our life of faith, we easily impoverish ourselves by embracing an idea of God that is too limited and small. And again, the doctrine of God's aseity stands as a bulwark to stop this happening. It is vital for spiritual health to believe that God is great, and grasping the truth of His aseity is the first step on the road to doing this.